Let the needle mention right now that Dustin and Steve that entering like the whole 3 miles radius surrounding Owens Energy Lab that right now I'm definitely prepping like totally by sheer coincidence like I'm prepping like Dustin and Steve right now witnessing seeing finding that like hold that like hopper has that to like end of that underground. It's right now. It's definitely my brain is to like to that exact area like I was about like nothing and see right now as they are searching for the city labs suddenly showing up to by sheer coincidence like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking they will be seeing that code underground code and or and I'm looking straight away like I'm looking like maybe the thing like straight away deciding to like check it out and I'm looking like at that point like and I'm looking like on even seeing that whole like I'm looking like maybe doesn't straight away feeling as like maybe that it might have been that maybe like a whole created by that so definitely still I'm looking like Dustin might be getting curious or like Dustin could be deciding to like check it out and go like Dustin is entering that goal and I'm looking by now definitely like the Owens' team like would have by now that completely wiped out like the entirety of that scope point in that exact specific underground upside down area. Definitely never brave using the frame and the things. Definitely never brave. So like I'm doing like nothing entering that underground area. So like I'm doing like it would be no more like an upside down. Even though like I'm doing still even though it won't be like an upside down kind of thing underground. Still, I'm looking at that underground news like pop would still be very much present living on the privileges. So like I'm looking like Dustin and Steve maybe at that point totally think that basically that underground pop might have already been done by Dark Stephanie or something. Well, like you know, let's find out like maybe them deciding to like check out like that entirety of like that underground is like pop to see where it leads to and I'm looking definitely the simple really thing that like that underground pub might lead to like the and but from that they like Justin and Steve like exploring that underground is like pub and ending up in like the deep underground of like owns of like kind of about this like scenario that I'm looking so like that way like I'm looking like as like Justin and Steve I'm looking at would be exploring that underground make like pub like into them ending up at that deep underground area at like Owen of the laboratory and they are like amazing them both Dustin and Steve getting the biggest shock of their life and see like the deep underground deep something like the energy laboratory is like the scenario that I'm looking. So like that huge deep underground gate from within like Owen's like energy laboratory like I'm looking like Dustin and Steve that is often finding out about it. It's like the scenario that I'm looking and at that point, for example, the like one of like Holmes team members who did only spotting that Dustin and Steve, and I was doing that they will straight away capturing Dustin and Steve. So like I'm doing and bring Dustin and Steve to that Owens like the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm doing like Owens like giving them this like talk of advice that and telling them to like not reveal about this to like anyone. But like I'm doing and then I'm doing like Owens like lead that getting the finance stages. But like certainly I'm doing like Dustin as well as Steve will be having their mind blown and seeing that explain deep use case to within that number round of that phones and available with that I'm definitely protecting that Steve not only going to patiently waiting to reveal about this to like Nancy and I'm looking Dustin as well will be that totally running off that and will be that the price will like find like the code again like Mike Lucas and all of them to like tell them about that this like this deep underground with it's like the new scenario that I'm looking that way like I'm looking the entire gang of that Mike Lucas and Will and all of them finding out about this deep underground gate getting like going to the Nabula about it as well as like through Steve like I'm doing like Nancy as well as like Johnson that way finding out as well about this deep underground gate within like the energy laboratory of Owen the name the permission because like especially since like I'm still thinking about the permission that like while Owens had recently showed like showed that Johnson as well as Nancy recently that case in that the energy laboratory of Owens like Ambassador at that point of time Ambassador like Owens might have definitely not shown that the true extent to which like the game within like the energy laboratory of Owens like the true extent to which like how much deep downward to net underground it has extended to like that crucial past like I'm looking definitely Owens might have kept it hid up from even Nancy and Johnson stepping over with them. So like I'm looking that way like Nancy and Johnson shockingly finding out the truth that tiny kid that they had seen at like then available to Owens like how much to text them deep downwards and that shocking realization happening to like Nancy and Jonathan and like Mike and Will and Luke sort of like feeling the scenarios that I was agreeing. And then I was like them all like maybe like planning on forming a team to like find a solution to like basically to destroy that cake and save like Hawkins and like trust with the real world. It's like the even the scenario them like forming becoming a team like entirely is also like about the example again like brainstorming and trying to like figure out a strategy to like story like that entire basis like my own very so like according to my observation at that point I'm definitely predicting like one flex to the only one flex team would be like telling Nancy about like in seeing that extremely huge underground yet within that energy level of Owens like I'm looking because we only at that point that like Nancy about the friend would be probably realizing that through this level one of the episodes like I'm looking like until then like I'm looking like as for like Nancy already knowing about like the 3 mile radius like leak from like ocean of the laboratory that knowledge like Nancy for that knowledge might have been solely through like Owens while bringing Nancy and Jonathan to like share the laboratory. Back then like it might have been Owens himself that might have related to like Nancy about like the 3 mile radius leak just in like simple words alone without actually showing the anything much at all. It's definitely my brother. So like Owens might have only been expecting Nancy and Jonathan to like understand and keep silent. But like I'm looking like the scenario to be like once like Steve would through Steve like Nancy and or Nancy like Jonathan would be like revealing about like the true extreme threat and danger of kind of like a situation in like the not only like the entire around Hawkins but also about the danger the rest of the world would be in through like the realization of like that deep huge gate underground within like on the energy laboratory. Like at that point of realization, I'm looking at maybe Nancy and Jonathan and Nancy and Jonathan maybe was thinking along the lines of like the possibility of like the parallel world. Nancy specifically thinking of like the possibility of like the parallel world like the more it open up like the possibility of like the entirety of like uh, the parallel world possibly consuming like the entirety of the town of Hawkins and maybe things not stopping at that alone like but like the fact the as the gate extends and opens up even more like maybe like the entirety of like, the real world getting swallowed up by like the parallel world and the entirety of like the real world as well turning into like the parallel world would be also like an ultimate threat of like a possibility that like Nancy at that point would be totally feeling certainly my brother so like because of the person like after the like, at that point like I'm like Nancy and Jonathan being more than ever would be like desperate to like get the news about like the energy laboratory of Owens to like the words definitely remember them as well like definitely after like finding out through Steve I'm going to bring the scenario to be like Nancy and London straight away once again heading back out of the town of Hawkins to like meet Murray Bowman and to reveal to like Murray Bowman about like the situation. So like I'm looking like at that point like Nancy and Jonathan like meeting Bowman and basically revealing the that Bowman totally being shocked. Like Bowman will definitely preferring won't be like have any idea at all about like this like deep underground break deep within like the this giant deep underground base within like the energy laboratory. Just definitely know the remedy. So like I'm looking like at that point I'm looking for like definitely still I'm looking at that point like Owens will be feeling still glad that basically that like Nancy and Jonathan had basically recorded like Owens' voice message and everything like that they are already in motion of like their strategy to like expose like Owens like energy laboratory to like subject the world. But like I'm looking at this scenario to be like because like I'm looking at that point like I'm looking completely form and totally believing and hoping that basically once like the world will be finding out about like the energy laboratory of like Owens like I'm looking like and that way like one like the rest of like then that feels like the world would be finding out about this and getting involved with like the whole issue within like the energy laboratory even about like this like two gates within like an energy laboratory definitely like the possibility of like basically the destruction of that gate being possible that giant fuse gate within like the energy laboratory being possible will be that much higher through like the help of like the entire like the world will be along the line and in that process, like their goal of like basically the angel destruction of like the energy laboratory and the remaining team of runner and Owens and all of them like would be also happening in like the props will be along the lines of like in a hopeful manner like at that point that Owens and through at that point, like Murray Bowman and so Murray Bowman, like Nancy and Jonathan, they totally hoping and feeling at that point, it's like the scenario that I was doing. But like in the scenario that I was doing, the scenario that I'm thinking on to that basically once like they would be sending their voice recording to be televised on like live television, like on live news, like and the like right before that voice recording of like also be going up on air on news, like and like right before that, definitely like. Um, Owen 16 would be only finding out about it. Because like I'm something like someone at like the working in like the news station that area like would be totally secretly connected to would be having some sort of like a secret connection to that Owen and like their team and like the so like I'm thinking through that person like I'm like Owens like being a reporter about like the threat incoming threat for like Owens and like the available so that way like I'm like Owens straight away giving him the telling him to like ensure that like that voice recording doesn't go on air. So like that way like I was like owns totally using all of his like influence and power to like ensure that like that voice recording doesn't go in live on news on air. It's like in the scenario that I'm doing. That way I'm still thinking about that like that will be how like Foreman as well as like and Anthony Johnson they have strategy to like expose like on sense like another laboratory to like the what would be like failing is like my percentage temperature. So like that way, like I'm putting after that, like I'm putting like Nancy and Jonathan and Bowman, like all of them, and maybe Steve and all of them, like totally being maybe like having that group discussion and brainstorming together. Also like a kind of like a remote portal that I'm doing. So like then like them feeling out like basically, so it's all up to them to like basically. So maybe them feeling that like. Then maybe like through government numbers, like government maybe coming up with like different strategies to like basically to like once again to get them to captured by own the scheme and basically to like only that time for instead of like maybe like an audio recording X for them to like get like an actual video recording or like take pictures or like video recording of that on of like the interior of like the gate within that own system of the laboratory and that way like I'm like without relying on like the most people like I'm like maybe that on like find some sort of like attempting some sort like a different strategy to like still get the word out to still get that word out to like the world them attempting at that and maybe I'm regardless of like multiple attempts like I'm like by like Murray Bowman side and like with all of their team side, like I'm like all that attempts is repeatedly getting destroyed by Owens and his team, like the scenario that I'm thinking and them all being given that final warning by Owens and his team to not attempt anything again to like other like clubs of the world about like the situation and the same like turn available and all that like in the scenario that I'm looking. And maybe like at that point like I'm putting them all like I'm putting like Nancy Johnson, Steve, Murray Bowman as well as like Mike and and like all of them like only feeling that really so like now it's all to them like that they won't be able to like get any sort of external help from the club solely due to that Owens and was like extreme due to like Owens and his team like extreme influence and power and all that. Like. So maybe at that point, like I'm believing that them totally feeling that like totally up to them to like really to find a solution to like destroy that to find a solution, figure out how exactly to like destroy that extremely huge and giant gate in like underground within like Owens kind of like even Owens and his team are like totally struggling to like find a solution to like still come to like them totally being that much optimistic that like I'm still deciding to like basically to figure out a way to like find a solution and maybe like I'm going to bring that by then like maybe like the union of like Mike and 11 as well maybe happen to like I'm mean, through 11 and through 11 the knowledge that 11 would be like revealing to them about like the battle board and everything like I'm looking maybe like some sort of like the hope for like possibility opening up for them and I'm looking that way like maybe them usually gaining knowledge that like through 11 and maybe even through will like I'm looking like will hold connection with like all these like monsters and this monsters and everything like I'm looking with them eventually finding figuring out that basically the solution lies in basically the parallel world. So easy like the point that in extremely huge giant cave underground 8% like the level of cake actually like 8% like the fan world itself. So let's just travel through like the fan world and to find that source of all this like spreading of like wines as well as like the tasting modes as well as everything in like the barrel board and everything. Usually for them like the pollution to like bringing all of this down and to reverting and saving like the real world from like the places not friend like barrel world is to like find where exactly in like the barrel world is that source of all the creation like is like hiding in and for them to like find that source and to for them to like destroy that source would be like simultaneously like all of these motors and vines and everything is like simultaneously connected like to destroy them all at like one swoop that they would have to like find the source of all of that they would have to like find it and destroy it. Would be along the lines I'm looking for like maybe either Belly or like 11 eventually revealing to like Mike and also so like with that like I'm looking that hope opening up for all of them that they would be in fact able to like not only save that tokens but like save the real world as well from like the spreading of like the bad world. It's like the eventual scenario that I'm looking over when you're sitting on the range. So that's definitely not the real picture right now. That's what for like badly missing 11 and basically with like 11 right now in like career place. Like I'm looking still like by the time like proper will be returning back to like that house deeper the next that for like I'm looking like they are like I'm looking like 11 would be definitely present there while proper will be returning there. Like the scenario that I'm looking and the reason would be like even though I'm looking like even though the race is well totally thought 11 to like stay there. Like I'm wondering definitely what might be happening. I'm wondering like what might be happening at that point, which would be leading to like 11 ending up back at like focus rate. I'm wondering like would be most likely due to like my personal observation that I'm thinking into that like careers like this is like when 11 had like recently like gone up to the careers in that dark void like area within like careers home itself. Like I'm wondering at that point seems like I think like 11 has said totally of that mom and home and like the rest straight away said no, shouted out no. Like I'm looking at that I'm sitting in my attention would be probably due to like the rest probably having that feature site power that mean of the brain due to like the experience and like etc. After like eventually after like a great number of years like the race might have developed like future site that kind of like ability especially my super industry. So which like definitely the race might have seen 11 like future already and like that future might be like 11 only finally like after like solving all the issue of like the parent world, like 11 finally returning back to like the race, and at that point, like 11 would be like totally like at the age of like that of like the college student or something, stepping in so like that many years will be passing until like 11 will be like finally like until like the issue with like the parent world and the will be finally getting solved and like the 11 would be finally returning back to like the race. So the one thing that the race might not only for saying using not future that Hopper, like Hopper's process, like Hopper would be Hopper's process in that happening, in that future ending up becoming a reality of 11, and the race would be like of like hugely high importance, like it. Hopper would definitely have having like an extremely important and major role to play in that happy ending of like a future of like 11 and the race becoming a reality is definitely the range about which like the race will be even right now would be in like the will be when fully aware of and so her future like she might have seen that as a new memory. So exactly because of this reason, like Therese might have shouted no to like 11 in like the dark void, while 11 told Therese that she's home. It's definitely my good reason because of Therese like knowing that like it's not now that like 11 should be coming home because like if even if like 11 is like with like Therese right now, Therese might have seen that other like might be well fully aware of or like the consequence if like 11 stays at Therese home that eventually somehow definitely Owens' team would be finding out about like 11 stuff by the if like 11 stays at that career. So and that way like I'm presuming like 11 and on top of that like 11 won't be even if like 11 stays at the race home like 11 will be always having to like stay indoor and won't be even able to like step out at all from the race home and 11 would have to like live 11's like entire life in such a manner because like if 11 does that like that means like the scenario would be like someone in part of like going to speed like basically like no trick and 11 and basically that way 11 getting captured and once again getting sent back into like 10% kind of state in like points and or data but we would give that future that like uh, would be like that consequential future that basically Cherries might have only seen as definitely not expected. So like for like 11 to finally be free and basically to actually properly be able to like run back to like Cherries as like Cherries daughter and to be able to like live a normal life as like a mother and daughter for careers and 11. In order for that to be possible, definitely first like the saving of like the world from like the whole situation with like the monsters and like planet world that would definitely be having to happen first, and then like after that like usually like the bringing down of like and the destruction of like the energy laboratory as well as like uh, bringing like on scientists like the remaining team of like runner like all of them to like justice and giving them punishment, like all of this might definitely have to happen first, and it will be only after all this will be happening that like careers might have seen like 11 finally being free and being able to like live a normal life like and being able to like properly them back to the careers might have been like the future of that careers might have seen especially members. So like precisely because of reason I'm preferring like maybe careers only telling maybe like I'm preferring like careers only in that dark world like maybe careers uh only telling 11 that way will please return back that when might be like the only thing the race would be telling 11. So like at that point, 11 would be totally listening to Jane, will be totally listening to her mother, and basically 11 would be like straight away returning back to like Hopper's places, like the scenario that I'm thinking. That way, like I'm thinking by the time that Hopper would be, with like Hopper right now totally badly missing 11, like I'm thinking by the time Hopper will be returning back to that house deeper than like the woods, like I'm using there, like while Hopper will be returning back, 11 would be right there. Just like, and 11 would be having that white smile, and Hopper will be seriously surprised, seeing like 11 so happy, without realizing that 11 has like gone up to like careers, their mother at home, like careers, and met her mother, and basically had returned back. And but then like 11, not even saying that to that Hopper either. It's like the scenario that I'm just ordering and my birthday. Right now, thinking of three ambition right now as for like this bandit strategy that like going to Steam are right now trying to use in exchange of the technology that they use for playing or I'm just going like that would be most likely first of all my three ambitions are like that is sitting on the like the reason for like them not being able to like use flamethrowers like deep underground might be due to that the further underground that they will be going like there will be like all this like gases that is deep up in there which might totally conflict with that the flamethrower and might cause like huge explosion. So like if flamethrowers are used to like get rid of like the deep, very deep underground point of like underground, deep underground upside down, like at that point able to like the flamethrower might react with this like gas. This gas might react with like the flamethrower and might cause like a huge explosion and like destruction, like might cause like a very huge explosion and might cause like all of them to get annihilated to like the possibility that happened to the so that and for that certainly with remedy so that so certainly this might be the reason for like Owens and his team not being able to like use flamethrower deep underground certainly with remedy. So like I'm wondering like as like the bandit as like the replacement strategy for that like I'm wondering like might be to like allow like it's right now that like that realistic replacement strategy that like so team right now would be like wanting Goofy to maybe like realistically allow like the abnormalities within that with body to that continue spreading and basically to that way like how like the monster like things like all these like monsters and wines and everything connected by the world are connected to each other and definitely numbers like definitely by now that offer as well as like so it might have revealed about like everything involving will to that points depending on the perspective or like this like monster like possibly yeah monster like taking control of will like so personality changing and basically as if like the monster from within will like basically speaking and basically taking over and controlling will and all that temporarily controlling will and all that ever which like I'm looking like along the lines like I'm looking like Joyce might have told to lack on property and Owens might have revealed about all of that information to his like team members stepping in over there. So like the team members would be right now only thing that basically with their whole soil test like the soil or like a single soil getting burned and like the remaining soil can rising in like the same manner. So like I'm doing like by now definitely on them the thing will be that only well and fully aware as for like all of these features from like the parallel and everything that totally being connected, having that perfect connection between each other. So with like just like abnormalities like the thing will spreading like I'm doing like one kind of team member like what they would be expecting would be for like this spreading to like eventually as like this like spreading will be fully reaching its like complete, and at that point like will his body and might be totally getting taken over, uh, controlled by like his like monster from like the battle versus the human preparation. So like at that point for like maybe like these team members of like one might be like through like this preference of like this term banded, like what they might be planning would be to like literally that way to have will fully get control in like mind and body by like the monster, and then for at that point for them to like capture will and put will into like an important kind of state, and then like they might have already prepared for like the experiments to like literally to still to experiment on will at that point, and basically to make that will take orders from like the Owens and his team members. So like that way to like at that point, wind will be like fully getting controlled. At that point, like the most of element of the element of like, the parallel world will be fully spreading through like the entire physical body, and that much like connection between like everything in like the parallel world and will be happening. So like at that point, for like Owens and his team to like take control of that will through their experiment and to send will into like the deep underground like uh, upside down maze when basically to have for them to like give the order to like will to like to order to like all those vines that are spreading in deep within like the underground mazes like within like the energy laboratory to retrieve because like them because of them not being able to like use the flamethrower to like destroy those vines like deep underground like the strategy as like a band-aid would be to like use will to like give the order to like all those vines that are spreading deep underground to like basically to leave and separate, and that way maybe like through such a manner like everything like Owens and his team members maybe thinking that like that actually like such an can possibly be becoming a such those to like basically remove all the vine uh, and everything that like present in like the deep underground upside down, the very deep end of like the underground upside down within like the energy laboratory. So like they are not able to like use like the flamethrowers. Will be like their bandit strategy is definitely much of the ambition. So the ambition is like since like once it's referring to it as like a band-aid, like I'm referring like so that the actuality of the situation would be definitely that both Owens as well as like the entire like team would be like when I'm fully aware that basically continuing prevention that like maybe considering the preparation that they will be only planning on like letting like the abnormal spread through like the entire like his body, and that way has that maximum connection from will to like all the monsters and vines and everything, and then for them to like control will and to have give the order to will to like commands to like all those points to like retreat and leave. And that way to like clear up like the deep underground. Yes, it's definitely my observation. But even then like I'm looking like with like on spot with like a band-aid like I'm looking definitely even the points and like science thing would be well enough fully aware that it needs. Even using such a strategy won't be like still a permanent strategy in like the long run because like it's definitely my observation because like I'm looking like definitely since like the spreading it's like so Spain like Amazon like them totally might be also feeding us like the possibility of like basically even if they use will in such a manner to have all the wines and everything or create like still like the wines and everything will be like learning eventually have since it has already been revealed to have its own intelligence and basically to find solutions when like obstacles show up for like all this like wines and everything from like the battle world doing such a thing and finding solutions like I'm doing like Owens and his like team would be totally expecting like all these points and even if they use such a bandit strategy like these points and everything, still figuring out like another solution eventually and will be still continuing on with the predict would be one thing that I'm looking like Owens as well as like his entire team would be like strongly feeling us definitely memberships and this might be the reason for like Owens is like calling it like a band-aid is definitely not the friend. So that solution a band-aid is definitely and this might be that band-aid solution is also like a possibility that I'm looking for in a frame. So like the name of the prevention right now has for like the steering like the possibility of like with ending up dying while using like the band-aid strategy. The name of the prevention right now as for like what exactly the band-aid strategy would be that I'm looking for in that right now I'm looking for in like it's most likely once again like the bad part is definitely not the prevention. But like here I'm looking like it to be like an extremely hot dark in which like I'm referring the name of treatment episode like without joy and the other like being able to like witness it like I'm looking like in the name of treatment, which is like all those like team members of like ones are totally expecting like that full takeover and will totally like definitely by that what they would be thinking expecting would be like will totally and fully losing control and fully losing control by like the monsters and wines and everything from like the side of will be what like they will be expecting like Owens' team would be expecting. So like at that point, like they will be only expecting like Will to like totally straight away act different and maybe in like a violent manner of that as like uh, as like so a totally different personality instantly at that point. Once like the full takeover would be happening, it would be what like Owens and his like team members will be only expecting to like happen on that period. So like at that point it's at that point for them to like all some rushing in and to totally put on a fake act as if like they are going to like freak and save Will and quickly give some sort of like an option treatment to like Will and that way to like separate for them to like separate Will from Joyce and take Will to like some room deeper than like the early laboratory and they are like they are like they might have already prepared like some sort of like a bathtub with like 60 hot water definitely not with so like and then to like forcefully how Will be put into that bathtub might be that plants and like in my temperatures like since like on stream can't use like the flamethrower deep in like the deepest most like underground upside down area which might be the case and getting remember it to be due to like the gas of their deep underground with the new so like the automated they might have of like a solution that Windows 6 solution they might have found might be like since like all these like wines and will and all these wines and monsters and everything is like connected once like the full stack of will would be happening like at that point for them so that way put way into like an extremely hot spot like that like at that by that by doing so like Amazon like they will be expecting to like the connection to there between like will be the maximum between like will and all the freezers and wines and everything of like the upside down like basically like even though they will be not expecting will to like seriously suffer at that point so like still by that like putting will into like the contact with like extreme warm temperatures like straight away like a similar effect to like using flamethrowers in like the underground upside down maze would be happening with the what like home team members will be totally expecting and this might be like their standard practice because like they will be totally expecting that like once like the full body takeover of that will be happening and once they will be like putting will into that hot bathtub like at that point like the not only along with like will like all the wines throughout like the entirety of like the deep underground area, underground upside down maze area, like all the wines there like they can't use like the flamethrower as well, so getting seriously in a exact manner as like will be getting affected. So wines as well will be getting affected and would be like would be either getting destroyed or like would be getting would be retreating. Would be what like they would be only expecting like the team members of like going to get something definitely my business. Definitely my very much for like in this scenario that I was bringing for like definitely for like owns like only agree to like team members. Definitely I was for like things like owns generally shows all this hesitation like definitely unlike owns a bit only unlike run of like owns stay down to be like a genuinely good person is definitely not the brain. So yeah like I'm like the due to like the whole pressure like I'm like owns like I'm remembering it's not nowhere being nowhere near as well fit as like for them. That's what I'm remembering. So definitely, but like on totally succumbing to like all that pressure from the like remaining team members and like on totally agreeing to like to that whole band-aid solution and like I'm remembering definitely like I'm remembering that very day exactly like on team members and on fully totally pretty like the getting fully happening and like getting fully controlled by like the fully getting controlled by like the monsters from like the upside down from like the battlefield and like they're totally having that instant personality shift and like at that point still with the like and maybe like will totally trying to like acting violent and trying to like free himself from like the hospital bed within like the normally level and at that point still like once the team members going up and like quickly taking will away deep into the name of treatment deep into like the energy laboratory to a room with like the energy laboratory and I'm separating one like they will be forcing will wants to like will would be like at that point would be maximum roasting to like the maximum but like I'm looking like forcefully I'm looking like from the team member like putting will into like that stuff and at that point I'm looking like will totally jumping out of like the that but like all of it will fight like it won't be actually will fight but like some of that will be controlling will like I'm looking like trying to like the team will be getting at that point, and with that like the team will crashing away all those that team members of Owens and everything like they will totally running through that energy laboratory and definitely as that will would be like that monster would be at that point would be controlled by and like it will get totally it wouldn't even be will like to be just like that monster I don't catch it with them uh in like that would be like even though it would be Bill's body like Bill's mind would be at that point would be totally getting hijacked by like some mind of like that monster. So like I'm looking that will totally in a crazy manner like totally run through like the hospital to find an exit to get escape. And at that point, I was like, Joyce like we would be totally running in front of that Joyce as well as like the scenario that I was doing. So like Joyce shockingly seeing Will. And I was like at that point maybe like a bit even with body language, Will's movement and the like facial expression, all would be like totally extremely different. Like that as that of like some monster or something is definitely my friend. So like Joyce would be shockingly vigilant in this. And I was like Will not even recognizing at that point Joyce like it was running in front of Joyce. Joyce would be shocked and frozen and nothing to stop him. It's like the scenario that I'm going. Or I'm also like Joyce coming to that stop Will and that Will slowly thrashing Joyce away. And basically Will slowly running out of that and running out of like the energy laboratory and escaping like the energy laboratory and also like Will slowly running into like the nearby forest. It's like Steven the scenario that I'm doing. And that way once again that the missing of that Will bias like once again happening. It's like a scenario that I'm doing. So like Will understanding probably escaping and running into like the forest and maybe like Will eventually ending up in that Muscle Fox is also like a possibility that I'm looking at. And maybe I'm also pressing like the remote possibilities like that way, like with like that as well having to escape into that and reach like one of the spots like that as well would be like Muscle Fox and that way I'm looking maybe for like uh will as well as like staff like totally meeting each other, like running into each other in that forest like which will be Muscle Fox. And I'm looking like again as well as like the monster living together, like spending time together up there and hiding in that box. Is like the eventual market box is like limited working scenario that I'm living and another game. So the bring idea of also like a scenario that basically by the time like the entirety of like the first team of like points of like team as well as like all of them Joyce and all of them will be like Mike and all of them will be like frantically underscoring this to find Will like Amazon like basically and eventually I'm going to bring them also finding Will deep within like not for just like the scenario that I'm doing and still even at that point Will would be actually controlled by like the monsters even with the wind. So like I'm going by the time they will be finding Will be the next monster for like Will would be with like the monster stuff is definitely monitoring everything that way, like in sense, they will be have like totally and up and Will would be like would have gone up by then like seriously. So like I'm looking like that totally trying to protect Will and like all that like I'm looking like that way as they would be trying to like capture Will like I'm looking like the monsters are attacking them and all that is like scenario that I'm looking and then I'm looking like eventually like that and Will like run through like that force and eventually the scenario ending up with like that totally creating at that point that gaining like the power to like create like portals on one of like the three like muscle was and totally creating that portal and like basically escaping into like the parallel world and still as well totally entering that portal and escaping to like the parallel world from the real world at that point that's like in the scenarios that I'm also totally correct and then at that point like the fish stuff to like basically save will from once again from like the parallel world will be like once again happening is like any into the scenario that I'm also totally correct minimum temperature that for like once like the full body and mind take over or like will by like the motor and that way like once like will be totally losing control like at that point I'm definitely putting like a serious attack by will on top is like definitely any scenario that I'm looking so like I'm looking that happening like and for badly getting injured by that attack of will it's definitely my direction I'm looking that happening either right before like by during like the moment like will fully getting taken over and controlled by like the monster and right before like Owens was like team would be like rushing in there to like help them out like right before that like the attack from like the monster control will on was happening it's like one possible scenario that I'm doing or like the other possible scenario that I'm doing is like it would be after like while like Owens' team would be like forcing Will into like a hot kind of like a bathtub and like Will would be like totally pushing them and thrashing them away and like running away like and trying to like escape. Maybe at that point Bob like Will would be like running in front of like Bob. So like everything at that point like Bob totally doing his like absolute best to like stop and using all of force to like stop Will. But like I'm looking at that point like maybe it being at that point that basically Will being controlled by the monster like badly attacking and injuring Bob and basically Will totally escaping is like the scenario that I'm putting. But like Bob would be so badly injured. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for and my friend like according to my friend that the injury that the jump of the Bob would be getting out of it the monster control. William that would be another super is one thing that of like an extremely powerful tracking by like the monster control will to that Bob. I think that's your thing, right? Or like another thing it would be like a powerful and severe fight from like the monster control skills that might be causing like the severe and serious injury to that Bob. Like it will be one of these two scenarios like my country. So like the minimum transition right now with that been feeling as like you have figured out how to like stop like the shadow monster. Like minimum transition would be like the solution that will might have figured to be to like basically for them to like go up to like the parallel world and basically to act where like the actual shadow monster would be like present and another like to for them to like find like the layer of like the shadow monster and for them to like totally burn it like exactly like how just now like basically like Owen Sustain had basically used like the flamethrower on all those vines like basically in like the underground upside down like during that way like for them to like go up to like the firewood and find like this cool layer of like the shadow monster and for like them to like burn it while like the shadow monster would be uh present in that layer like for them to like ignite it and basically like set like the that way to like that way to like destroy like the then we will be totally feeling that like like the wine like the shadow monster as well would be like ending up succumbing to like the burns and like would be along the lines like would be along the lines like starting to like especially the extreme heat of like the burn and like basically the shadow monster would be dying over the man of would be along the lines like will of like the solution that was Bill might have found out right now was definitely on the thread. So like this would be what like the layer of like the shadow monster would be what like Amazon from that might have been like foreshadowed by like the initial arcade games in which like I think like Will had like the first incident of like the shadow monster like basically back then in like the beginning of like season 2 while like Will had Will and Mike and all of them were playing the arcade game since like the game was that of like going up to like the dragon layer, like I'm saying that dragon layer would might have been like a foreshadowing of like Mike and all of them literally in season 2 like deciding to like go up to the shadow monsters layer in there like it's like there and they need for them to like ignite the layer while like the shadow monster would be resting within that layer. And for that way for them to take out like the shadow monster would be what like they would be totally like this like solution which like I'm looking at it right now will be like revealing without related. So like I'm looking like will right now will be I'm looking will be revealing to like Mike alone like the scenario that I'm looking before like they could like reveal that to that Joyce like I'm looking at even before that I'm looking like will getting totally fully getting controlled by will losing control and will getting totally getting controlled by like the shadow monster like and this will with like my damn body getting fully controlled by the monsters is like the scenario that I'm doing. And then will like escape from like the energy level and all that fundamental which I'm doing happening that way at that point. So like I'm doing like at that point, like even though Will would be totally missing, like I'm doing like Mike at that point alone would be having that information as for like what will would be like revealing to like Mike as for like solution to like bring down like with that shadow marker before they can control it like the scenario that I was doing, which like I'm doing like even though I'm doing exactly the scenario to kind of definitely institute about the prevention of the aspect cable from the energy level preamble with like will running into dark and like them shortly escaping to like the battle world from like the real world of like the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm doing that way like Joyce and maybe Mike has and like would be all leading to like the parallel world and I'm also bring like to find and save will and at that point I'm also like they would be just going to like the parallel world just to like find and save will but like I'm doing like their one main priority of like and I was at that point like I was like maybe like close as well as Mike would be totally believing that even if they find will in like the parable like they won't be able to like save them because like they look actually getting controlled by like shadow monster so like the goal by then like they would have figured that they will through that will sharing that solution to like Mike, like I'm doing, and Mike telling like Joyce and also like I'm doing by the Hopper and all of them will be showing up, and then another team would be like integrating to like the battle. So then at that point, like their ultimate goal would be to like find like the layer of like the shadow monster and to destroy like the shadow monster, and that would be how like they would be able to like free and save Will from like the control of like the shadow monster, and like that way like they be able to like then have to like find Will and like bring Will back to like the real world. That was everything. Really like along this lines, I'm like the strategy and planning will be happening in the like Hopper and Joyce and Mike and all of them. It's like an even scenario that I'm just bringing. But like I'm just bringing definitely there have to be even way more to like this whole situation than just a single shadow monster. Like the shadow monster that's right now controlling will be just like one among like the great army of like shadow monster that will be all spread throughout like the that will be all spread throughout like the battle world. This is definitely my opinion. So that definitely I'm also doing like without realizing that like I'm also doing like in season two like I'm also doing like Joyce and Hopper and Mike and also like maybe like finding it from I mean like destroying like the shadow monster by burning like the layer of like the shadow monster and then saving Will and then probably feeling as if like they have like that is really like now everything will be back to normal. But like I'm doing still like I'm doing like the gate of like the extremely huge gate deepest in like function of the laboratory still remaining as it is. And that will be precisely because of like all those like that gate being connected to like all great number of like shadow monsters and all the other monsters that will be present in like the parallel world, definitely in the prediction. And it will be also like the gate will be definitely connected to that source monster, which will be most likely a huge tree monster deep underground somewhere in like the parallel world. It's definitely in the direction that I'm still doing. So like until destroying that tree, like I'm looking that until destroying like that source in that tree monster, like I'm looking at that uh, deep, huge gate underground in that the energy laboratory of like I mean like in the energy laboratory of Owens like keep continuing on spending as like time passes and the gate growing bigger and bigger and moving deeper and deeper underground with like the scenario and sitting on the memory. The minimum three ambition right now was like Justin right now believing that like his bond with like Dark work before Dark turned huge and into like his demigod and like I'm still I don't remember before like that bond within like Justin to the like I'm looking like once again getting restored into this like scenario that I'm looking because like I'm looking like it will be just like Justin right now or thinking things and basically thinking along the lines of basically Dark was trying to like attack Justin back then in that set it's definitely my prediction. Like it naturally, I'm assuming that would be still deep down having that bond towards like something, and I'm assuming that eventually having a major role with in like the whole situation of like the battle world and everything is definitely an initial scenario that I'm assuming definitely due to this like bond that person had created with like that like I'm assuming eventually I'm assuming like the eventually I'm assuming Mike and all of them like they will be in that fight to like destroy like the battle world, fight to like put an end to like the battle world from spreading into like the real world. In that fight, like I'm just making eventually just like current bond, this recent bond that Dustin has towards Dark until resulting in that Dark growing up all the way into not only becoming like the stage of like the humanoid faceless monster, but from that point on as well, that Dark speaking on growing and basically eventually reaching that the size of like that of like the spider like shadow monster, and that way Dustin and Crow will be getting an ultimate shadow monster ally through like the bond Dustin recently had made with like the selecting the scenario that I'm doing. So like definitely I'm going to contact one like Dustin and all of them. I'm definitely able to bring Dustin would be along with like Mike as like they will be heading over to eventually would be like heading over to like the battle to save Will and also to like destroy like the layer of like the serum or perspective scenario that I'm doing. And they are like I'm doing that most likely to be even like the next time they are definitely putting like definitely totally running into like once again it's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point would be when like I'm doing maybe that thing getting will be getting that shocking realization that like that still holds that bond deep down towards like and that doesn't want wasn't even trying to like take but things like that nothing will be having that shocking realization there in like the paragraph during that for something just time period. And they will be on their task to like destroy like the layer of the shadow and stuff like the scenarios that I'm looking. That way the bond between like Dustin and Dustin towards like the I'm that bond getting restored like scenario that I'm considering. But like I'm considering like Dustin totally telling that. to like basically stay in like the parallel world and not to bring that in like the and that's like the scenario that I'm thinking because like I'm maybe at that point person will be considering like the safety of that maybe that because like person will be sharing like the possibility of like stuff shows up to like the real world like basically maybe that someone trying to like take that like so like I'm going to maybe that way and I'm going during that time like that I'm going to bring that like stage of transformation which is that of like a humanoid faceless initial faceless monster transformation that in the show like basically we get that humanoid faceless monster transformation stage that like that will be at that point and so like I'm going to interested in like that to like basically stay in like the parallel world and basically that like when our husband takes like the dark back you showing up to like the bad word. Along this lines, I'm different husband how they communicating like dark and like that friendship between them. One friendship between them being up from that way and they really husband saying bye to like dark as like the along like my candle and all of them are coming back to like the real world at that point is like an entrepreneur that I'm looking at friend. So like the new three ambition right now is that the relations like they can totally see everything in the shadow of the field and feel it in the shadow of the field. Like I'm looking at definitely since like right now basically like this whole underground in like will strong this like whole underground network hub like area which like the shadow monster is like forcefully ensuring to like not allow Will to be able to like see Will precisely because of like definitely exactly like how Will can see everything the shadow monster sees and like features in the shadow monster sees it will be the very same thing with the shadow monster as well like the shadow monster as well will be able to like see everything will see and everything the parameters will be able to like feel everything will feel as well depending on the operation. So like I'm definitely by now definitely the shadow monster might have totally figured out that basically it will like totally acting as like a spy to like the to towards like the thief and helping out like the people who are trying to like destroy like the spreading of like the vines and everything of like the upside down and everything. Like this much like I'm sure definitely the shadow monster might have already figured and this will be like the reason for like the shadow monster using all of its strength and power to like basically uh, to and giving command to like the spreading within like will to like basically quickly as possible take over like the entire this body. It's definitely my opinion, but because it would be the reason for like just now the like the rapid spreading of like the abnormalities within like will happening will be precisely because of like the if of like the according to it will be due to like according to like the order of like the shadow monster. So it's definitely my opinion. And so these are the reason because like the shadow monster right now the fully aware is like when it's like only acting as like a spy and helping out the people who are trying to destroy like the shadow monster and like the vines and everything. So definitely shadow monster will be right now trying to quickly take over like the entirety of like the body and mind before like the will be able to like help them further stepping in the frame. So definitely this will be the reason as well for like the shadow monster like using all of its power to like this would be only using all of its power to like totally block off like the block off and like preventing them to be able to like see what it is that is in that network hub like area in like that underground tunnel like hub. It's definitely my return. What that would be I'm looking would be like a hub because like I'm looking like the points from like the gates of like the uh, gates from from like the energy laboratory and like even while like the gates are extending like and like the points from like the gates are like creating all this like underground multiple underground tunnels tunnel like maze like path like I'm like not for these points I'm won't be able to like by themselves won't be able to like extend in an unlimited manner depending on so like you know for them to actually keep on extending like I'm they would have to like uh, form like a hub like area. It's definitely my frame. So like I'm like that would be like a mini store or like a mini hub like thing which would be representing like the actual growth hub like source which will be like a giant tree like monster that will be buried underground deep underground in like the balance from which like everything would be like spreading all the vines and everything would be like spreading especially in the infrastructure. So, like the case of right now, in the current situation, I'm thinking it will be like most likely a mini hub. So, like I'm putting these points while creating like the underground upside down tunnel. Like I'm putting these points might have create also ensure to like create like while these points might have extended and reached its like limit, like we're almost about to reach their limit. Like I'm not for them to like continue growing. Like I'm putting these points might have created like a junction like place, like a junction like a hub like place for like and there might have created such a space, and basically they are like another like these wines might have all these wines might have all combined and basically to create like this like giant tree like thing, tree like source like a hub from which like the tree itself like from which like new sets of wines in all directions might be like predict definitely another prediction. So like this would be how like the wines would be able to like spread and take over especially when you would have to like create like multiple such like network junction hub like tree. So definitely might be like certainly another so like this kind of like a tree, like a monstrous kind of like a tree to which like only wines would be connected to the is what I'm also talking would be present in that whole underground upside down area junction like area which like the shadow monsters like okay doing is like best to like prevent will from being able to see especially when with the rain. So like the shadow monsters totally clearing like the possibility of like that of like these people who like will like acting like a pilot who will like these people like basically destroying that underground like upside down like hub like tree like basically so really that fear within like the shadow monster definitely have a brain so definitely able to bring that and these like this like current hub would be like only in a tiny mini version of like the actual source like actual giant tree like these uh hub like junction like network from which like all the vines and everything is like spreading like the bad ones the movement frames and the sitting on and micrograms. Leave micrograms right now with like one team right now trying to like check it out like as like what it is that in that junction like area I'm going to bring definitely still in the micrograms in that like once they will reach in that junction like area like I'm going them getting like the biggest shock because like it will be like a giant monster kind of like a tree in that hub like area from which like all those vines will be like spreading in all directions. So like I'm doing that giant monster like free to be like so could be like would have totally built itself up to be able to like defend itself like in an exceptional manner, defend and attack back in an exceptional manner. So like I'm doing like all sorts of like poisonous like attacking kind of like creatures would be like stuck onto that tree onto like the branches of that tree is like going to scenario that so really like such kind of like a tree that monsters tree living and attacking monsters kind of like a tree that will be present in like that sub like areas definitely with Reddit. So like I'm gonna like own like team as they would be like trying to like to find out what is it in that junction like them totally finding this like giant tree and like they're right now also trying like being on like the favor of like Owens and like Will and all of them and they believe maybe like that giant up like tree being put like a location where like it would be not deep underground, where like they wouldn't be able to like use flamethrowers, but like that have like tree being present in like a higher location where like the team of like one team actually be able to like use their flamethrowers. So like I'm doing that way. Still I'm looking like once team would be like taking it to that hub like location and would be like about to even use their flamethrower itself, like I'm looking the tree attacking and like the tree like sending out like shooting poison and all that is like the scenario where I'm going to be really hard. Like I'm there will be like poison, not only poison shot out, but like poison smoke as well, like coming out of like that tree to basically take out like the team of like going to like the scenario that I was also like that three like would be that source that have like three like I'm something like would be like fight desperately fighting to it like absolute maximum to like survive and to like take out like the team members of like who would be like desperately using like the flamethrower. Yet like I'm like, the three would be like fiercely fighting back and I'm like a lot of them like among like the teams like I'm considering maybe like among like the initial teams that would be sent by Owens to check out like that what in that junction like area but like all of them maybe like getting taken off by that tree before like they would be able to like use the flamethrower to like take out the trees like the scenario that I'm there. And then I'm looking like on sending like a full army of the like teams to like basically to check out that area and they're like I'm sort of like them like collectively with like a huge army like I'm like them only using all of them like using like the flamethrowers together and I'm still I'm sort of like that tree taking out a bunch of them. Yeah, like I'm doing like through that great struggle, then eventually taking out that tree with like danger scenarios that I was remembering. So like at that point, itself, I'm like shadow monster like seriously getting affected and would be totally able to like sense how much like the shadow monster will be getting seriously injured and affected like the moment like and will be taking damage like the moment that three like that hub like three will be getting destroyed by the all the play collective flame or like the scenario that I'm so maybe through that, like maybe since like I'm looking right now, since like it will be only like the shadow monster I don't right now that will be controlling will like maybe that way once like by destroying like the three like the shadow monster will be taking serious damage and destroying maybe like the shadow monster slowly retreating back deep into like the battle world. And that way like maybe like the shadow monster also like due to the damage like the shadow monster also like giving up on like the control or like on the remote kind of control which the shadow monster plays down well. So like I'm thinking like that way like the control over will as well coming under and maybe I'm in that way like will being freed and finally being freed and will turning back into normal. It's also like a remote kind of like a properties that I'm looking for. So like maybe I'm looking like it would be like the spreading from within will won't be like the they did have like most of from within the but like I'm looking like maybe that things that was like placed on to like this mouth when like proper and like found like I'm looking like some elements of like these like wine like things and might have that entered into like this body and from there like I'm delivering like and that presence of that those elements like presence like within this more body might have been alone what might have allowed like the shadow monster to be able to like control it. So like I'm thinking it might not be like dark like any more person growing from within will like but like everything like might have been like elements of like the vines and things that might have entered this body that might have allowed will to be able to be controlled by like the shadow motion, like the other possible scenario that I'm looking at right now. So like that way, like I'm looking like once like that giant so up like three will be like getting destroyed, but like the flame throws like at that point, like the maybe I'm the super like at that point the shadow motor maybe like losing its like control all of the way. And I'm looking maybe definitely I'm looking one like that three like hubs would be getting destroyed like I'm looking like at that point definitely once again when you like seriously suffering but like I'm looking like it might the end up it might have been that giant hub right hub like three that might have played like a major factor like in enabling like even like the shadow monster to be able to like control this. So like about that I'm sorry. So like maybe if that hub like three getting destroyed like all the vines in like the current great number of like underground, upside down, uh, beneath, like points the energy level. The all the vines in each and every single one of like this underground beneath like power like getting simultaneously destroyed. The moment that source like hub like gentle will be getting destroyed is like the was scenario that I'm doing. So like that way like while that will be happening like simultaneously that all that elements of like the upside down like that will be presented in Will's body as well and that as well simultaneously getting like eliminated and destroyed and that way Will finally being freed and like Will turning back to like normal and Will but at the same time Will also losing his like powers to be able to like basically to see like the battle world from the real world and sense each other and all that. So also like any will scenario that other possible scenario that ever was again so definitely not 3% right now have just like the location which like the Tinduka Steve and Maxine were like they are right now setting up like the location to like lure out like I'm very made it that being like the location right underneath it might be where like that source like of like three will be where like two weeks like Owens Owens like team are right now getting on me to like check it out. It's also like about the that I'm doing. So like I'm looking like once like eventually they will be like using all that flamethrower and throwing that free like I'm doing like at that point all of them being like maybe like at that point like Steve and all of them will be present there like only being so that yeah back to like what's happening beneath it and so like I'm doing maybe one like that giant tree which I'm bring will be like that source like subject thing that will be right underneath where like Steve and all of them will be there like that will be getting destroyed by it also flamethrower collective flamethrowers and everything like once that tree will be destroyed like I'm maybe like the until then like I'm doing Steve and like all of them, Dustin and all of them, Maxine and Lucas and all of them will be like shocked and confused as to like what's going on beneath it, and maybe they would be thinking that basically maybe like it might be dark beneath it or something like they will be totally confused. But like I'm just saying, like once that giant tree like come like tree would be like going like I'm just saying like um the like surface like totally coming caving in and basically that way like a giant hole opening up And basically at that point, like I'm looking like Lucas and Steve and Dustin and even Maxine at that point, like shockingly seeing like this giant hole, and beneath it, like all these like team members of like Owens at that point is like the in that underground is like scenario that I'm looking for, and like they will be seeing all that flames beneath like in like that underground area and all that like and would be shocked, and they will be like and preferring like Maxine as well for like the first time in her life would be seeing something unnatural. Only at that point like scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm wondering maybe what they would be seeing would be like this like giant three like monster like basically in that absolute fame as like it would be consumed by like the flamethrower in that underground with like the like this would be what like and maybe like Steve and all of them like Maxine would be like shockingly because it's like any good quick scenario that I'm looking at at that point and my personal impression right now. So like the minimum reimbursement right now, like Steve and all of them right now basically in like the night waiting for like the after to and basically like Maxine still being doubtful. Like the minimum reimbursement right now is certainly for like them keeping on waiting and waiting and like not still not showing up was like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like Maxine like as time would be like passing more and more like another like but like each hour that will be passing like I'm looking like Maxine will be getting more and more frustrated and irritated and thinking that they are all sort of like a joke that they are going to pull on Maxine and all that. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. So Maxine will be getting more and more irritated and like Maxine eventually getting angry and shouting out to them all of them. And I was wondering it would be at that point that I was wondering like with like giant massive like they would be hearing like all this uh like scary sounds and everything from like the underground where they would be and like I'm wondering at that point like this giant massive hole like basically caving in and happening right in front of them and like them totally shocking nothing totally shocking along from like totally shockingly witnessing with like giant monsters kind of like a massive tree in that underground being like getting burned using like flamethrowers by like species like him and other than something of sort of name of the Korean person right now with that basically so this is like Nancy has right now seated on steel with like Jonathan like I'm referring definitely to example to like that once like Nancy will be into this Steve like I'm looking at that point like the thing he's sweating in for like Nancy and I'm like eventually that will like only uh, creating that extreme disturbance with like Nancy which like eventually and would be ending up with like Nancy totally confusing to like see about like what she did with like Johnson and all that. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. Definitely I'm looking like at that point like a huge drama and like a huge like basically like she was only shouting out at like Nancy and I'm looking like and all that happening and like that way like I'm looking that to be like a whole scene that would be looking happening would be most likely happening in like open school itself. In like the field in like open school, like Amazon like while the like school house like Amazon like would be when Amazon would be consulting about it. Finally consulting to about this to like Steve like the scenario that I'm taking. So like Steve totally making a scene at that point. And that way like the entirety of like open school like finding out about like Nancy cheating on Steve like the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm doing like uh definitely, and like the like I'm looking like a lot of them like of like the classmates and all a lot of things students like mocking Steve and like making fun of Steve and Nancy and all that like living the scenario that I'm considering. But like I'm considering still or just eventually I'm preferring that he's settling up once like Steve I'm preferring like eventually as time passes like Steve totally get on mature like I'm preferring until then like I'm preferring Steve always like maintain that distance from like Nancy and Steve not at all even looking at Nancy and like Steve totally ignoring Nancy and like and Jonathan like this is Steve remaining in like a non-contact man of full non-contact man of with like Nancy. It's like the scenario that I'm with. But like I was like eventually as like a time passes like I'm Steve eventually ending up being mature and like Steve basically uh, deciding to like accept learning to like accept it and then we were like we were totally deciding to like finally move on and I was like at that point I was like definitely Steve eventually coming back and basically Steve like meeting up with like Nancy and Steve telling sorry to like Nancy and basically Nancy telling sorry to like Steve and by then like I was like definitely Nancy as well as like Jonathan might be like in like a relationship with like the scenario that I'm doing. But like I'm doing like also like the scenario to be like by then like I'm doing would be in that new relationship. And right now, I'm going to bring that new relationship possibly usually ending up being with Maxine is like the scenario that I'm so like I'm looking like right then like Maxine would have already grown up and like I'm looking like Steve by then like the whole like I'm looking like Maxine I'm looking like will be probably secretly having like a crush on Steve is like my brain. So like I'm so like literally I'm looking like Maxine totally. I'm just saying that to like Steve and I'm looking like definitely Maxine would be like totally like seeing how much like Steve would be like suffering and going through that pain as like maybe like vendor of as like all the students would be like mocking and making fun of Steve of like due to like Nancy cheating on Steve with like Johnson and all that. So like I'm doing like while or during all this time like I'm doing like Nancy in the way of the noticing Steve and put like suffering and all that like I was doing definitely eventually like Maxine like having that crush on Steve like in the scenario that I'm doing and eventually I'm doing like in like the case of like a of like one of the like I'm just like maybe like definitely I'm also bring like Maxine eventually having this like massive crush on like Steve and I'm also like Maxine totally telling that to like Steve and I'm looking for like eventually in like the case of like interrogate Maxine and Steve being in like the relationship and at that point definitely I'm looking for like Maxine's brother once I being that absolute villain and I'm looking for like Maxine's brother getting extremely enraged at once he will be finding out about it and I'm looking like Maxine's brother like attacking Steve at that point it's like the scenario that I'm doing maybe I'm looking at that point you'll be when finally Steve would be like fighting back and basically I'm looking at maybe simply protecting like about like back then in like the at that point like the filter around the right in that fight between like Maxine brother and Steve like maybe Steve totally finding or scoring and defeating Maxine's brother and like Maxine's brother like totally embarrassingly losing in that fight against Steve was like the scenario that I'm looking and I'm looking most likely that fight even happening as that fight as well totally happening in like the field area of like corporate world or like any other scenario that I'm looking. So like that whole image that like Maxine Singh has built up as just like main guy and like school and everything like I'm doing like all that like getting eventually getting crushed by Steve. Eventually at that point in like the future and I'm looking like on that point on like I'm looking like Maxine's brother like losing his like ego and I'm looking like at that point Maxine's brother ego getting crushed and like him being kicked into his like life by Steve like the in the scenario. And after that, like I'm looking like matches for the way slowly tumbling down. Just like the in the scenario that I'm looking on and friends. So I'm just different like eventually like the age of like a few years, like I'm looking like student matching eventually and being in like your relationship. It's like an individual scenario that I'm looking to bring on frame. You know, the sense that like basically indoor right now, Steve like for Steve like probably helping mental health industry like basically to have like nothing for something like I'm looking like eventually the scenario to be like not only Steve losing Nancy, but like nothing losing Maxine to Steve eventually. Just like the scenario that I'm looking. But like I was looking at that point, like initially I was looking at it being like such a great shock for like nothing. And maybe even Lucas that I was looking like initially them totally being angry with like Steve, but like I'm looking like eventually I'm looking like person as well as like Lucas like totally being like probably still being like basically like them all like even Maxine and all of them like with what again having the friendship between each other like and again the store like in the scenario that I'm the way and as well as Lucas being at the state of like the relationship was that between like Maxine and Steve is like also like the scenario that I'm looking at and my good friends and Dustin and like I do the at that point like growing up and being more accepting of all that. It's like an Indian scenario that I was delivering out so like definitely on the rendition right now as for like the whole sort of chemistry between like Lucas and Maxine right now. Like I'm looking definitely why it is the case of like Lucas like and look like Lucas will be having that massive crush on Maxine that I'm doing in the case of like Maxine still I'm looking like Maxine in the case of Maxine to be totally different like I'm looking like in case of Maxine like right now I'm looking like Maxine be totally seeing Lucas as like a good friend and nothing more definitely not a friendship. So it's Lucas and the would be totally creating to understand like the scenario that I'm doing. So like and because of it only assuming that like Maxine has like some so like kind of patient and like love to like Lucas will get on the line like Lucas will get totally maybe assuming is like doing the scenario that I'm doing while I'm like uh in the case of like Maxine I'm like without much related but I'm like Maxine to be like having like that rush towards like speed like about when the terrain so the like during that the whole initial chemistry between like Maxine and Dustin like while it was formed like a back then like Maxine might have kind of like instantly but like I'm looking like with like Steve right now all of them like showing up to like the picture like I'm looking like the more time they will spending together and especially not able to excuse to let it but like with like Dustin taking Steve's advice like I'm looking that I'm looking like totally creating that feeling of like a distance from like Maxine towards like the things like the scenario that I'm looking at. And like I'm looking like that for initial likeness that like Maxine might have like towards something like for that changing. And I'm also like the more time they were just getting together, like I'm looking like Maxine or seeing Dustin more as like a good friend and is the that crush everything you can like Maxine mutually towards like Steve, it's like getting into the scenario that I'm basically right now. So like definitely no transition right now, like dark right now showing up like definitely aesthetic development transition that like already by now itself like I'm looking like definitely that might have reached like the stage of transformation of that of like the humanoid faces, not the human transition. So according to like the description that Justin would have given about like the size of stuff and everything to Steve, that definitely estimated on that. Like so, Steve would won't be like expecting like humanoid size like this with monster. So like I'm doing that as well coming in as like a surprise for Steve. So like I'm doing like Steve at that point being shocked and is Steve quickly attacking, trying to attack like that facing monster of that. That point's like the scenario that I'm doing. So like at that point, Silver Cameron that to be like by now would have reached like the technical strength that I'm like that totally or foreign Steve quickly is like the scenario that I'm looking at as like that would be about to take Steve's like at that point is when I was like Dustin would be like come to the rescue by Dustin like most likely using that lighter. So like I'm looking like that lighter through that light like I'm looking like the fire like I'm looking uh like move towards due to that for oil and everything, like I'm looking like fire totally quickly move towards like where that would be looks like the scenario that I'm looking. Yet like I'm looking like at the very last second, like I'm looking somehow stop managing to like dodge and basically escape, not proceeding in like escaping the path, like the scenario that I'm doing. Steve as well totally would be by the next would be escaping that path. So like that as well would be escaping that path. And like right then itself, like that upper like escaping like the path would be like some charging towards like something's like scenario that I'm doing. So like something like that would be like at that point charging towards something that absolute intent to like take substance like but like I'm doing right as like that would be standing right in front of like something like towering over something in that giant humanoid kind of like shape with most of form of like dark like as like that would be about to take substance like at that point is when I'm looking at that very last second is when I'm looking like that would be like totally be able, would be even recognizing that it's like substance that we have because of the dark and everything like I'm looking maybe that like the scenario being like that not recognizing that like it was like substance until like that we were getting seriously close to and will be standing right in front of the person and will be about to take it. Like at that very last second. And another one by the like Steve would be like injured as well that like Steve as well as like now will be able to like stop Dark at that point. So like I'm wondering like right as Dark would be about to take Dustin's life and I was like seeing this like Maxim will be totally terrified and shocked and frozen with fears like you can argue that everything. So like as like Dark will be about to take Dustin's life at that very last second Dark himself like stopped and they really solely due to like Dark recognizing that it's like Dustin. So like I'm going that totally dropping and like now turning back and walking away like the scenario that I'm doing. Right. So like that being like that absolute biggest shock for like first that absolute shock of realization for like Dustin that basically that still even though Dustin didn't have that bond towards like that once that turned into the demigod like that still holds that bond deep down towards like Dustin and that being like the sole reason for like that taking Dustin's life like Dustin having that shocking realization at that point it's scenario that I'm doing. So like after like that stopping from taking Dustin's life like I'm doing that like quickly walking away into like the toxic like scenario that I'm doing. And at that point I'm looking it will be only from that point on that like I'm looking that Dustin would be with that realization that Dustin will be feeling that absolute regret and guilt uh, within him towards like towards the manner in which like he had treated the person that and so like I'm looking for like definitely Dustin like he would have at that point fixed in his mind to like definitely to find them and basically to like find up and he like felt sorry to like stop like that intent like I'm looking like something would be determined and fixed in his mind to do just like the scenario that I'm looking. So like with that whole the whole dark situation like really temporarily being over to like the scenario that I'm looking and that's at that point even telling to like Steve and all of them that with me to like not harm or hurt like the scenario that I'm doing. But like I'm doing two is like I'm doing like none of them are doing like integrating to like the like to Dustin's like the scenario that I'm doing. That then you can see as well as Maxine as well as even Lucas as well as the different of like the mindset that like they to like find that and basically to has to like basically take the life of that before like the next set of like disappearance and like that happens in like Hawkins like basically. So like they would be of that mindset while Dustin would be like totally in contrary Dustin is reading down totally fixed in his mind to like basically determined to like ensure like the safety of that while also Dustin would be like afraid at that point to like basically to from that relationship with like the and basically to meet the and like to find and meet the and like to tell story to the like in scenarios and the separation and frame. So like the minimum frames right now as the for like there being two dark like monsters and like one of those monsters will be like the actual dark while like the other monster like I'm looking like as like how it might have sort of and it will be all due to like the leakage from like the own like energy level the minimum frame so like I'm looking like there are such great number of like underground upside down maze like pathways like I'm looking like those pathways like I'm looking that we might have been created like not only by like the mind but like the monsters like into like a path fitting for all this like monsters from like the parallel world to travel to like I'm looking that we might have actually been created by like the monsters with the limits and so like I'm looking like that back when initially Hopper had investigated like pumpkin field like I'm looking that tribe of like the tribe like that monster tribe like that like Hopper had heard near to like the scarecrow like might have been the only being like this like dark like monsters in their very tiniest form definitely like the kind of size that like of star that basically Justin had initially found stars in like I'm looking like it would be in such a size that like I'm looking like those monsters might have been already spread over there, like in great numbers of centimeters. So like I'm like all throughout like the forest around like the around like the town of Hawkins, like I'm looking like there will be like these great number of dark like monsters, which like some of them which might have also turned into like the humanoid side form transformation of like the bit monster as well. It's definitely one of the rarest. So definitely one of the rarest where like basically like two monsters showing up like definitely able to like by the time Steve would be even noticing and realizing that there are like two like dark like monsters fight there like and by then itself like and like the second monster would be like attacking Steve, like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like once like Steve would be getting attacked itself, like at that point, like the Dark as well, maybe like attacking Steve simultaneously at the same time. And Steve would always find like so like at that point I'm going to bring Dustin like totally lighting up the flame and basically as like the fire would be like through like the oil would be moving towards like those monsters like I'm putting like most likely I'm putting like both those monsters like dodging and managing to like evade it's like a scenario that I'm putting. So like at that point I'm putting like definitely like the scenario to be like dusted definitely everything would be like charging into like to save Steve's definitely and while Lucas as well as Maxine will be like especially Maxine was totally terrified, but like Lucas and never think like Lucas from like you know it things scare like Lucas from like the top of the building like using the like slingshot and basically attacking like those two dark like monsters. But like I'm sorry like that won't be even something like you know near in a like of like a significant enough of like a damage at all to like those monsters like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like those two monsters like basically collectively like and definitely I'm looking one of like those monsters in the dark like so between those two monsters like collectively ganging up and like attacking Steve and like Steve getting badly injured and that monster would be about to take Steve's life. At that very last second would be when like nothing would be showing up. And Dustin would be trying using some sort of like maybe like Dustin at that point would be picking up like Steve's like this for that. And at that point like I'm looking like Dustin trying to like attack like those two monsters. So like I'm looking at that point like I'm looking like not dark but like the other monster that would be not dark like I'm doing that monster straight away charging at like Dustin and like attacking Dustin and that way like Dustin as well looking like the listener of that and then something that as that monster will be like attacking about to like attack Dustin like I'm like okay Dustin's life and that in the second I'm something like that would be when like the monster that would be recognizing that it's Dustin and then like at that point in fact that other monster which would be that like I'm like would be charging in and basically would be attacking that other monster and to protect Dustin that was Naru and at that point Dustin having the biggest shock of like a shocking realization that basically that that it's that still values that bond of friendship that it has towards nothing would be along the lines something which of near related. So I'm looking dark totally attacking that other monster. So I'm looking like Steve would be fairly injured and side and basically dark will be attacking that other monster and another way that most likely totally that way to protect Dustin and during maybe dark also taking the life of that other monster is the scenario where I'm doing. And then I'm doing Dustin at that point will be shocked and then after taking the life of the other monster that slowly getting up towards Dustin and Dustin will be totally slowly walking up towards that. So they are I'm looking that absolute reunion happening, but I'm looking at that point itself might be when I'm looking the team of Owens underground would be throwing that up three monster three which will be present in that up area. So I'm just going that three will be ending up dying. So that way the moment that tree will be dying all the vines and everything in the underground upside down, great number of underground upside down would be instantly all dying off. And at that point itself it actually stop as well and was going right in front of Dustin I'm going to stop as well in your die. There's the eventual scenario that I'm delivering, and that I'm delivering to be such an emotional shock of an extreme regret for looking at that point. It's an eventual scenario that I'm delivering and not preemption right now. The name preemption right now is Steve and all of them basically they right now trapped in that abandoned book. I'm delivering right now definitely for the comics rate I'm delivering those great number of dark I'm doing breaking through into that book abandoned book the scenario that I'm delivering. So at that point I'm doing definitely able to bring absolutely no one is coming to show up to say Steve and all of them the different scenario that so it could be all of them Steve, Maxine, look and up all of them getting cornered on one end of the bus as the great number of monsters would be slowly walking towards them to totally attack and take their life with the scenario that I'm looking. So I'm looking as well as those monsters as a group as a gang would be approaching and would be standing right in front of that two and about to attack them right as they would be about to attack them would be the precise moment where I'm looking that hub network junction area in the underground where according to my definition that literally that three monster thing would be present from which the vines would be spreading from the towards hoping I'm looking that hub area which the shadow monster appears will see I'm looking there I'm looking Owens team would be using their flamethrower and destroying that tree giant trees the scenario that I'm putting that would be instantly taking the life of all those great number of dark monsters that they will be about to attack and take the life of Steve and all of them I'm doing. At that very last second I'm doing them all ending up by due to that giant three months of underground getting destroyed due to own Steve. It's in this scenario that I was really I imagine to range. The minimum preemption right now is for that one monster that chased away all the other great number of dark monsters will be that actual dark is the minimum preemption. So it might have precisely been able to extend substance person that is definitely a preemption. So definitely that what might have happened right now might have definitely been dark or chewing custody. It's definitely a preemption. It might have been solely due to substance present among the gang of Steve and Maxine and Lucas might have been the sole reason for them right now ending up taking the life of by all the great number of the monsters right now is definitely not the same. So definitely I'm considering Dustin right now it's without much great delays or considering Dustin totally figuring it out and realizing that basically so that was that monster that basically showed up from the scene right now was actually dark and that dark had saved them Dustin totally realizing that uh without much great delay at all the scenario that I'm doing. And then I'm doing Dustin will be feeling that absolute regret and guilt within him for behaving to dark the way he did and basically so I'm from that point on the considering him as a solution for Dustin being determined to basically to find dark and to save to sorry to dark. But definitely my personal impression right now. So definitely impression right now for still thinking the dark monster are going somewhere I'm considering definitely my personal impression right now is definitely so the shadow monster right now would be quickly because it would be also able to see everything will see and everything will feel as well. Definitely remember the shadow monster protect it's a hub giant tree monster which would be where to like that location to where like this team right now will be heading off to definitely a great so to like to ensure like at all costs to like ensure like the protection of like that giant hub like three like monster through which like the wines will be only able to like spread even further to like down like and like definitely to destroy like that hub like to protect like that hub like three monster rather than like the shadow monster might have most likely given like some like the parallel world might have given like the communication of like the order to all these like dark like monsters to like basically gather up into that area where like that hub like giant tree would be underground. So, and that way to like attack and take out like the people that are coming to like basically to destroy like the giant of like three like for just three like monsters definitely not a free episode. So like I'm doing definitely right now for like on stage right now since the government level would be having to like deal with or like dark like great number of dark like monsters like general scenario that I'm always bring much frame. My frame resistance are like there really that much coordination in that between like the monsters definitely through which like they how they will be working and operating with their ultimate goal to like take over like the entirety of like the real human world like right now but they will be doing that with that absolute coordination definitely because like about like definitely right now like the fact that all those like dark like monsters like basically has left off while there were all that food there for them like I'm doing those great number of dark like monsters even rejecting food to like basically to listen to like the orders of like the shadow monster might have been what might have happened and that might be how much like that giant hub like tree might be precious might be seen as like precious to be like the shadow monster and definitely because of that like the shadow monster ensuring to like not allow them to be able to like see that giant tree is definitely hub like tree is definitely very so like that would be how much precious like in like their goals to like take over like the real world that the giant tree monster kind of like a tree would be seen as that much precious by like the shadow monster definitely a good place. And like the orders of like the shadow monster it could be to that much seriousness that like all these like dark like monsters would be seeing it's also definitely a good reaction. That would be the best reason for like them totally even rejecting food to like basically to listen to like the orders of like the shadow monsters and shadow monster and to accordingly it's definitely a good reaction. So like it could be with that much seriousness and dedication villanistic kind of like a seriousness and dedication that and with that absolute coordination through which like right now like these like monsters from like the battle world would be like moving forward with like the intent to like achieve their goal and everything. It's definitely my looking to the direction right now. So like the claim of direction right now, like very saying they are almost here. Like I'm referring what might be will be referring to will be like all the great number of monsters that have that might have thrown that like honeycomb like underground upside down. Might have so great number of underground upside down might have made it to living in like the forest all across like the forest in like the towns of example different they might have all been right now according to like the ultimate villanistic like practical plan of like the shadow monster like they might have all been right now summoned to the Hawkins lab right now. It's definitely not the temperature through that underground, exact underground honeycomb like the down path like and they might have all been like summoned by like the shadow monster to like the Hawkins lab energy lab to like completely destroy like Hawkins energy labs that new really because of like the shadow monster being able to like see what will see and feel what will feel exactly like how will can see and feel what the shadow monster feels and sees is definitely member so that might be the case of definitely member so like I'm doing like after like the initial flamethrower attack on like the underground upside down. Uh, just recently itself, like I'm looking like which might have been something that like I'm looking like Owens and its team might have been doing for a while right now. It's definitely not related. So like I'm looking like the recent flamethrower attack might have been like that last straw for like the Shadow Monster. Definitely not friends. Like Shadow Monster might have definitely been eventually planning on counter-attacking, but like I'm looking like this recent flamethrower attack, like I'm looking like that might have still triggered like the Shadow Monster triggered the point that like Shadow Monster might have felt to like straight away without any delay at all to like launch like the counter attack and just completely obliterate and destroy like the entirety of like, the Nazi laboratory of might be like the intent like I'm doing right now like the scenario will right now saying that they are almost here like I'm doing right now what the scenario that I'm preparing right now is for like from those great number of underground honeycomb like underground holes like I'm looking like from all the holes like I'm doing like a great number of like an entire army of like faceless staff like not like appear showing up out of it and they climbing up and trying to like make it towards like from like the underground towards the top to like the energy level of this is like the scenario that I'm looking. So like right now like pop up right now looking like I'm looking this would be what like Hopper we are right now seeing is like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking straight away like Hopper will be straight away realizing the seriousness of like the situation. So like I'm looking like definitely Hopper will be like the party objects for Hopper at that point that will be that everyone there in like the energy laboratory so would definitely most likely would be ending up dying by the hands of like those great number of monsters like them. But like definitely Hopper like some people like would be thinking of like instead of like attack and trying to like defend like I'm like Hopper straight away thinking of like basically figuring out a way to like escape and survive. So like I'm doing like the scenario that I'm brings for like Hopper on seeing that like I'm doing like Hopper being torn off and like Hopper straight away running towards like where Joyce and Will be and Hopper simply carrying Will and Hopper telling Joyce to like run. And I was looking at that point like Hopper as well as Joyce only running towards like the gate within like the end of the laboratory of like Owens and like of Hopper along with like Joyce and Will like once again like basically exactly like how like they had saved Will from like the parallel world and basically entered back into like the real world after saving Will. Because right now like the complete opposite happening where like they would them would be like escaping from like the real world to like the parallel world that will like survive. So like I'm going through that gate I'm going will be how like I'm going like pop up force as well as Will alone I'm going like to be like running through while Hopper will be carrying Will and so it's running through that gate. And the player was looking like the Bob as well definitely would be that Joyce would be telling Bob as well to like come along with them and basically Bob as well definitely that way would be like entering into like the battle one at that point and it's like the and that way like them escaping is like the scenario that I'm looking and I'm also cutting like Owens as well and also from the gaining more so like about into that maybe of like about like Owens as well abandoned into like lab and basically that way escaping into like the battle world like one possibility that I'm doing or like those possibilities that I'm doing what maybe for like Owens being extremely passionate about like the energy laboratory that maybe like Owens deciding to like maybe like Owens maybe trying to like defend and protect like the lab and that way Owens as well in some time like the other person scenario that I'm doing but like leaning more towards about to say that like along with like Joyce Hopper as well as like Will like Owens as well as Bob as well, like basically escaping into like the parallel through the gates within like one of the laboratories. So it's like this is the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm doing like but like I'm doing right now for like a command that like the shadow monster might have given to only a great number of like dark like monsters while summoning them might have been to like totally just to only destroy like the entirety of like the energy laboratory. That's the only thing that accident that like this might be like the only odds that the shadow monster may have given. These like great number of like monsters and might be like sole reason for like right now that shadow monster probably having summoned all those like monsters right now. It's also like about that. So like I'm definitely like definitely the shadow monster would be totally eventually determined to like eventually have like that whole takeover first over like the entirety of like the town of Hawkins and then to like take over like the entirety of like the rest of like the world real world and to turn like the and transform like the real world as well into like the into like the parallel world into transform and turn like the real world and to like take over like the entirety of like the real world and turn it into like exactly like the parallel world would be like the ultimate goal of like this shadow monster of the but like I would like the shadow monster would be approaching things in like a that in like a calculated manner that I'm like even with like the current great number of like that like monster army that like the shadow monster might have maybe controlling right now in its real world through that whole honeycomb like underground uh port within beneath like the energy laboratory but still under like the shadow monster will be totally also feeling that like these number of like army of like the like not just still this won't be at all enough for like the entire state or like the town even in the town of Hopkins would be around like maybe I'm looking like the shadow monster will be came. So like I'm looking like the current mission and order to like all this great number of star like monster will be by like the shadow monster will be to like just for to only destroy like the entirety of like the energy level. So that way like I'm looking right now while I'm looking for like of Joyce, Will and like Bob and like Owen might escape into like the battle going right now. Looking for like everybody else in like the end of the laboratory I'm looking for like them totally maybe ending up dying is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like and like the entire everything in like the end of the laboratory is completely being destroyed by like the dark like great army of like dark like monsters like in the scenario that I'm looking for right now. I'm looking considering like the scenario to be like after like the dark like most great army of like dark like monsters will be like destroying like the entirety of like the energy level of points like I'm looking like them all like returning back specifically into like all those like underground upside down like honeycomb like great number of holes like I'm like through those great number of holes like all those monsters like returning back through that hole all of the monsters returning back into like the forest all across like the town of all like scenario that I'm looking for.